Okay, everybody, here's the pattern for the day. For a show of hands, who likes to go to the movies? Yes? Okay, good, me too. Can somebody give me, or anybody, just shout out some statements about going to the movies?
Popcorn.
Popcorn.
Fun.
Friends.
Well, you can use like sentences and phrases too.
Friends.
It's
Cool to go to the movies.
Okay.
I like popcorn at the movies.
There you go.
I go to movies with my friends. The movies are getting expensive. 3D movies, awesome. I saw Lion King in 3D and it was awesome. I almost cried.
Spending time with family. Weird six
Babies crying in the movies. Holding hands in the movies.
Babies frying? No.
Crying.
The handwriting is absolutely horrific. What was the last one that we?
Holding hands.
Holding hands in the movies.
So 7th grade. So.
Alright, so today we're going to talk about kind of combining sentences like this, or sorry, statements like this, which are also known as clauses, there's a keyword for you, into the 4 types of sentences that we use as in our English language. So I'm going to go ahead and pass out these graphic organizers to you.
Thank you.
And if you would please fill them in as I go through it myself. Alrighty. We're going to come back to these sentences a little bit later. Okay, so, like I said here before, clauses. Before we can learn the types of sentences, we're going to need to know what makes up a sentence. So we have 2 different types of clauses here. First is our independent clause, and like it says on your graphic organizer too, it expresses a complete thought, contains subject and verb, and also, first one to fill in is it can stand alone. So the first thing you want to remember about an independent clause, the most important thing, is that it is a complete thought, and you could just make it a sentence in itself. Next we have the dependent clause, which is, or it contains a subject and a verb without being a complete thought. So it can't stand alone. And we're going to write that in here, the second one, or cannot or can't. Okay, so now that we know our clauses, we can move on to our second key term, which is simple sentences. These are like the easiest type sentences to read and to write because they're usually much shorter than some of the more complex sentences. So the first one here, first point about simple sentences is that they're made up of one independent clause and no dependent clauses. Okay, and then the next bullet point is it can contain one or more phrases. And the last point, it can have single or compound subjects and predicates. And just to give you a little reminder about what a predicate is, it is one of the main parts of a sentence along with the subject, and it contains the verb and the words that are modifying the verb. So just as an example, the predicate in John went home would be went home, okay? All right, so now that we have simple sentences, we can turn here to our compound sentences. The first one is it contains 2 independent clauses. Okay, and then the next one is it links, these are kind of ways to combine these 2 independent clauses with an independent word marker, a comma, or a semicolon. And just so you know, an independent word marker is a connecting word that you use at the beginning of an independent clause when you're trying to link it to another one. So they would be words like however, furthermore, moreover. So that would be helpful when you're trying to link 2 independent clauses. You would put them right in the middle so that it kind of flows. And then also a comma in this case, in order to link 2 independent clauses with a comma, you would need to use a dependent word marker, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But those are kind of words like but, for, and, so, if, and things like that. And then also a semicolon. That is the way that you can link two independent clauses without using any special words to link them. You can just simply put the semicolon in there and move on with your second clause. All right, so now that we have compound sentences, we're going to turn to complex. The first one contains one independent clause and one or more dependent clauses. Okay, and just like our compound sentences, there are certain ways to link this as well. First is with a dependent word marker, like I mentioned earlier. You use a comma and you add the dependent word marker such as and, for, but, so. And also you could use a semicolon if you want to in order to link the dependent or independent clauses, sorry. So now we're going to kind of put both of these two together and make the compound complex sentence. So this is contains contains two or more independent clauses and one or more dependent clauses. All right, so now that we have gone through all the 4 different types of sentences, I'm going to talk about some common errors that occur usually when you're trying to combine the clauses, and it doesn't necessarily work out correctly. The first one is comma splices. And this happens when a comma is used to combine clauses, when it should really be either a independent word marker or a semicolon. But instead a comma is used and that is incorrect. So this is when a comma is used between two independent clauses where a semicolon should actually be. And then the next one is a few sentence. That's the second type of error that is commonly made. And that is when two independent clauses are not separated by any punctuation. So that means you just write two independent clauses straight through without linking them in any way. And then the last one is sentence fragments. And that is when dependent clauses or incomplete thoughts are used as complete sentences. So that would be kind of like just saying like a sentence up here that's not a complete thought and using it as one and putting a period at the end, because that would be incorrect. Okay, so now we're going to go back to these sentences up here, and we're going to try and, you can put it on your graphic organizer how we're going to combine and make each one of these sentences. But first we're going to label, what do you think that each one of these are in terms of clauses? So popcorn, would that be an independent or a dependent? Dependent, great. I'm just going to label them with a D or an I. So fun.
Why is it a dependent?
Because you can't use a sentence, or popcorn is not a complete thought. You can't just say popcorn and somebody's like, well, what about popcorn? You know, because it doesn't express a full idea, and it kind of would need other words to help prove your point of what you're trying to say about the popcorn. What about fun? Same thing, right? You don't know, what are they saying about fun, you know? What is fun? I know we're talking about movies here, but if you were to just write this on the paper as a sentence, you know, that wouldn't really work out. Mm-hmm. How about it's cool to go? Dependent? Independent, correct. Because you could use this as a full sentence. That's a complete thought. It's cool to go.
It's cool to go where?
Where?
Well, if you put it in a paragraph, and you're talking about the movies already, then if you just put "it's cool to go" like as a closing sentence, that would serve as a complete thought. Okay, how about I go to the movies with friends? Independent. That's an easy one. Okay, how about saw Lion King in 3D? Is it a complete thought? Exactly. How about babies crying in the movies? What was that?
Dependent.
Yes. And we hold hands in the movies.
Independent.
Exactly. Just somebody have experience with this. No. So So anyway, let's try to come up with first a simple sentence out of these. A simple sentence is made up of just an independent clause. So this could serve as our own little simple sentence here. I go to the movies with friends, because it's a complete thought, and it's just one clause. Okay, and now we have compound sentences, which is two independent clauses. So we're going to have to combine these two independent, or one of these independent clauses into a sentence using either an independent word marker, a semicolon, or a comma with a dependent word marker. So we could say, it's cool to go, or I go to the movies with friends.
Because it's cool to go.
And then if we wanted to make it a,
Semicolon.
yeah, you could do a semicolon.
It's cool.
Exactly. Good. Okay, now we have a complex sentence, which is one independent clause with one or more dependent clauses. So that could be, you could say, I go to the movies with friends and saw Lion King in 3D, because that would contain one of both, correct? Movies with friends. So normally the students could write this down and you're, oh good, you are writing it down as examples. Good job. Okay, and then last one here is a compound complex sentence, which as we see over there contains two or more independent clauses and one or more dependent clauses. So we could use this one here and just add another dependent clause to it. So I go to the movies with friends, it's cool to go, and it's fun. We just did and. Okay, so that would be our compound complex sentence.
So it's fun couldn't be independent.
What's that, sorry?
It's fun.
It's fun could be independent, but if we add the and to it, that makes it dependent because it's dependent on the rest of it.
And it's fun.
Yeah, okay, good. So just to kind of end here, can somebody kind of give me a summary of what a simple sentence is? Yeah.
I go to the movies with friends.
Exactly. Or well, yeah, you can do an example or, you know, what does it have? What kind of clause? Independent. Yes, exactly. Compound sentences. Two independent clauses, correctly. Complex sentence. Yeah.
Two or more independent and one dependent, right?
What's that?
The complex? Or,
that was the compound complex. So we just skipped.
Jumping
That's
ahead of
fine.
myself.
That's okay. But now, by default, we know that a complex sentence is one independent clause with one or more dependent clauses. Okay?
When do we learn past tense and present tense?
2 weeks.